Welcome to another Spotlight interview where we spend time with the founders and entrepreneurs and the leaders driving change across insurance. Today, I am joined by Jeff Toe and Marc Fredman, both of whom are over at CCC Intelligent Solutions, a publicly traded SaaS tech business that connects insurers, collision repairers, OEMs, parts suppliers, and others. Gents, a very warm welcome to you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So it's great to have you on board. So first of all, Jeff, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, a bit about your background and your current role over there? Because I appreciate you haven't always been at CCC, right?
That's right. Yeah, I actually cut my teeth in the insurance space. I started out as a consultant at PricewaterhouseCoopers Consulting, building out claims, straight-through processing systems, underwriting systems. Did a stint at IBM and then joined Salesforce, where I ran their insurance business unit, bringing products to market. And during that time, I felt the itch, the entrepreneurial itch. I saw a problem, a pretty pervasive problem in the industry, decided to take a big chance, left and founded Safekeep. Long story short, we were acquired by CCC, and I'm sure Marc and I will share a little bit about why that happened.
Good stuff. Thank you. And Marc, tell me more about your background.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chief Strategy Officer at CCC, which really is just a fancy way of saying that my job is to think about the future and make sure that we're doing the right things, that our customers are the winners of tomorrow, which includes Safekeep. I know we're going to dig into that a lot. Been with the company for about 8 years. Prior to that, I was also a consultant, like Jeff. I was a strategy consultant for about 10 years at the Boston Consulting Group, and I was a banker for a bunch of years before that.
Cool. And I saw at CCC, you were a product guy before strategy guy. Is that right?
Yeah, so I was. I've had a few different roles at CCC. So I've run product management, run marketing, a bunch of different things. But at the end of the day, I always look at it as what's the right thing for customers, where are customers headed. And so a lot of the past year has been actually, you mentioned we're now publicly traded, working with different groups and stuff to take the company public. So meet with a lot of investors who are obviously very excited about a lot of things we're doing. In particular, the past few months, a lot of discussions about Safekeep.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's dive in there. I have so many questions for you both just from your introduction, but let's start with Safekeep. So Jeff, a little bit of background. I guess you touched on kind of the reasons for founding the business, but it's a big old leap to move from, well, I guess, from consulting into Salesforce. But then, I assume you're sitting on a fairly sort of comfortable income. I don't know sort of your home setup, but the older you get, the less risk adverse you become. I mean, that's certainly true for me. Tell me about Safekeep, your journey, maybe setting that up. A brief overview of its kind of claims mining, claims recovery services,
Sure.
And maybe some of the work that Safekeep was doing to make it so attractive for CCC.
Yeah, absolutely. In the course of my career, I had the chance to, thankfully interact with a good number of carriers. And over the course of that time, I saw a recurring pattern. And the pattern were really two key pain points in the industry. The first is the problem of automating decisions, decisions that generally are done in a manual fashion by a select group of experts, who accumulate wisdom and heuristics over several years. And the second key problem is just the fact that the data that feeds those decisions tend to be unstructured. In particular, what I saw was that the claims area was fraught with these two problems. And so I decided to leave my cushy job, my cushy day job to found this company. And by the way, just a side comment, the older you get, the more you embrace risk, because you realize that the clock is running out and it's now or never, right? So
yeah, that's a nice way to look at it. Yeah.
So I decided to leave to really explore these two areas, these two problems. And it turned out that subrogation was a really good place to start. First off, there weren't a lot of solution providers focusing on that. Even core system providers would regard subrogation as a kind of afterthought. They were more focused on, maintaining claims data as a system of record, as opposed to taking action on that claim data. And so I saw an opening. We began our journey actually working with a co-design partner. So worked with a customer, validated the need, established product market fit, but more importantly, put ourselves in the shoes of the end user. In this case, it was the recovery professional. And once again, we saw the problem of the need to automate decisions and to be able to read from unstructured data sets. And subrogation really suffers from these problems because it's a highly regulated space. There are 50 states that will determine the subrogability of a claim, and it could differ not only by state, but by line of business. Subrogation is a huge problem. For those of you who are new to it, basically, anytime an accident occurs, let's say it's a car accident, if the other party is found to be at fault, right, the first party carrier can go after the third party carrier and get money back through the process of sending out a demand. So that decision around, well, what is subrogable is a huge problem in the industry. It is such a big problem that because it's manually done today, they end up leaving a lot of money on the table. They don't pursue to the fullest extent that they could. According to our estimates, bottom up, we believe that we're talking about tens of billions of dollars in subrogation that is being left on the table, right, by carriers. So we focused on that, and what we found was that our customer co-design partner realized a tremendous amount of value out of it, and then it just snowballed from there. Then when other customers started taking notice, we started getting embraced by large insurtechs like Root, not just carriers. And it culminated in us winning the Global Gold Award in the Zurich Innovation Championship. And the rest is history.
Very cool. How quickly were you able to validate the ability to automate decisions, sort of read from unstructured data? Because all of that is some serious tech, right? That's underpinning that. And when you start a business, I assume it's just you. Maybe you've got a couple of people that you're roping in and persuading this is going to take off and be a good idea. How quickly, working with those potential customers, were you able to actually get something reasonable off the ground? Sure. and evidence your theory?
Yeah, I think there are really two phases in every co-design innovation partnership, right? The first phase is the proof of technology. To your point, we're talking about some pretty sophisticated components here. The first being natural language processing. We're dealing with a lot of police reports, adjuster notes, fire reports, and the like. So the extraction of the appropriate entities is extremely important. That's where NLP comes into play. The second piece is around predictive modeling, and being able to discern, signal from noise. Are we seeing the right kinds of subrogation potential? And are we able to predict what is the recovery potential in terms of dollars, right? And then the third piece is around regulatory rules, right? There are thousands of rules across all 50 states and across all lines of businesses, and automating that can be quite a challenge. And so what we sought to do was work very closely with our customer to understand what are the requirements, how would they configure these three pieces, and actually just show that the technology actually works. Now, the second phase, though, is the proof that it could actually move the needle in terms of a business case. This is absolutely important, right? Because without that, you could have the shiny new toy on the technology front, but it just won't move forward. You'll be trapped in proof of technology hell, right? Sure. So, or purgatory. So, the great thing about the subrogation space is that you could get dollars really fast. So in the line of business, for example, auto line of business, right? Assuming that statutes of limitations haven't run out, from the moment you send out a demand to the moment you actually see dollars, we're talking months, not years. And so, and by that, I mean 3 to 4 months, right? And of course, property and work comp lines of businesses, it's a little different, but there's a way to prove that you could get dollars through the door very quickly by focusing on subrogation as a use case and focusing on the right line of business.
Love it. I think it's fascinating. Oh, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just I mean, getting the business off the ground first of all, let alone making it the success it was, and it still is, but now part of the CCC family, I'm sure. So, Mark, that kind of leans me towards asking you a quick question. So I'm fascinated by your journey. So February, I believe, was when the acquisition took place. I'm sure Safekeep sort of was on your radar long before then. I'd love to know and understand a little bit better about when maybe you first came across those guys, whether you were looking for them or you somehow stumbled across them in a different manner. But that journey where that kind of connection came about, but also how it fits into the CCC world. And I'd be really interested in that kind of broader picture and why they were the right partner for you guys.
Yeah, sure. So the way to think about CCC at a very macro level is we think of ourselves as the cloud platform for the P&C insurance economy. So as you mentioned, insurers, collision repairers, parts suppliers, lenders, auto manufacturers, all those different companies come together through the CCC cloud so that they can conduct business with each other and resolve, a lot of different accidents on behalf of consumers, millions of consumers every year around the United States. And so one of the big things that we try to do is systematically digitize that P&C insurance economy. So all the transactions that are happening, hundreds and hundreds of transactions can happen for any given claim. And so what we want to try to do is just systematically go through from end to end. How do you digitize those things? So we run a lot of different customer innovation sessions, including advisory councils we do twice a year. And we've heard for many years, subrogation is a huge pain point for this industry. And we talk typically around the auto side, but obviously a big pain point around property, work comp, and all the lines that Jeff mentioned. And so we've been, our customers have asked us to help them with this for many years, but frankly, we didn't have the expertise, we didn't have the technology. And so one of the things that we also do is we try to talk to different companies in our ecosystem around partnerships and alliances and stuff like that to try to help to provide value to our customers so that if you're on the CCC cloud, you can actually roll these things out quickly. So that's how we got introduced to Jeff. And very quickly, besides, talking to Jeff and seeing his enthusiasm personally around subrogation and the team, it became very clear that this was really the definitive gold standard in the world around subrogation and the digitization of subrogation as a subrogation platform. And we also really like the cultural fit. We've had a long commitment to innovation, despite the fact we've been around for a while. A lot of AI, a lot of things that really mesh very well, complementary. So Jeff actually wasn't really looking to sell the business, but we started talking, and it just made so much sense because here you have, again, a world-class product, but still kind of earlier days in terms of really rolling out across a big customer base. We have 300 insurers in the US as customers. 18 of the top 20 auto insurers are customers, many of whom have been customers for decades. We push a single 100% multi-tenant cloud, 1,700 software releases last year. So there's a scale and a trust that our customers have to bring them great new products. It's one of the reasons we have an 80 net promoter score. We don't sell stuff that isn't good, right? So we bring them great stuff, and then we roll it out at scale. And so that's really what kind of happened. We started talking to Jeff. We felt like it was super complimentary, and I think I asked Jeff, hey, why don't we just put these two companies together? And fortunately, like you said, in February we made that happen.
How easy was that? You can't say otherwise, Jeff. Sorry for the difficult question, but how easy was that?
I'm kicking Jeff under the table right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. How easy was it for you to get your head around? I think that's probably my question. From kind of going from sort of entrepreneur with full control, to a point as any of us have, to being part of the CCC collective. How do you find that transition?
And I know this is just going to sound like the answer that you'd expect, and I mean this sincerely, that it was such a natural fit. It exceeded my expectations. As Marc had mentioned, I wasn't planning on selling the company. We had a pretty grand vision. We wanted to be the dominant platform in Subro, and eventually carrier-to-carrier engagement through straight-through processing. And number one, what struck me the most was that CCC shared in our vision. And in fact, I recall to this day that, you know, when I shared our plans with Marc and team, they said, you know, what would we do? What could we do to accelerate that, right? Don't be modest in your vision, but he really encouraged us to kind of think big. And that's exactly what you need when you're thinking about building insurance economies. You know, Marc talked about that. They have the body shops, they have relationships across the OEM ecosystem as well as the carrier ecosystem. We were thinking exactly the same thing, except extending that with attorneys, with the independent, and the field adjusters, and the folks who you normally engage within the subrogation process, but more importantly, that carrier-to-carrier engagement and feeding those relationships between those carriers with the right kinds of AI-driven use cases, subrogation being one of them, right? And there are many more that we could explore together. And then eventually culminating in automation of payments. All of this is within CCC's wheelhouse, right? So number one, alignment in terms of vision, alignment in terms of product. You know, I touched upon that, but the data that that CCC has is incredible, and our ability with permissioned use of that data to actually have a forward view into the subrogability of a book of business is game-changing in the industry, right? And then finally, the third thing is CCC's kind of approach in customer engagement. There's a reason why their NPS scores are through the roof, and that is their commitment in working closely with customers, really listening more than talking, more than overtly selling to them, but really listening and embracing customers as true partners. That was the way Safekeep was founded, and the way we engaged with Zurich in the Innovation Championship, with Root and others who are publicly referenceable out there, right? And I saw that that was the way CCC handled their relationships. And so I knew that going into this, that we would be able to continue in that kind of process, and to think big. So it was just such a natural transition.
Love it. And you both referenced customers incredibly heavily, and I like that a lot. And I also noted the customer innovation sessions, Marc, that you mentioned, which I thought was a great thing to borrow, I think is the word, isn't it, into my own business. Marc, tell me about so obviously things are fairly recent between the two companies in a acquisitory sense. Have the CCC customers felt the benefit of Safekeep's acquisition as of yet? I don't know if it's too recent. And if so, I'd love to sort of dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, as I said, we've had a lot of customers asking us about Subro for a while. And a lot of customers, frankly, that were talking to Safekeep prior to our acquisition. But, you know, if you think about a world pre-CCC, and this is a challenge that a lot of startups have, is the startup itself can move incredibly quickly, right? I mean, Safekeep will blow past any expectation you have around how quickly the team goes. But as a new startup vendor going to sell to a top 10 insurance company, say, you know, the contracting process can take a while. You got to go through this review, that review. And as I said, we've already done all that, right? We have customer relationships that are literally 20, 30 years old. We are the top vendor. We won Vendor of the Year awards from many of the top 10 insurers in America, OEMs, et cetera. And so the ability to essentially help customers see that if you really like this product, and why wouldn't you, you can turn it on because they're already on the CCC cloud. And I know I mentioned that, but that's so important when you think about innovation, because so many insurers today are struggling with, I've been on-premise, you know, on-premise systems for a while. I've got to go through, you know, 18 different approvals to get something done. That's actually what we offer as the alternative, is you're already on this cloud. You've already got everything configured. We have hundreds of thousands of users. We run the vast majority of the dollars that go through any insurer, any PNC insurer in America go through the CCC systems. So if you like what you are seeing from, again, could be something we've developed, could be something that, you know, like a Safekeep that we brought in-house, could be a third party, we can get that thing going really quickly. So we've already seen that start to play out. There's a tremendous amount of interest in the insurance industry. And Matt, this is what you do every day, right? Insurance companies are figuring out I gotta go faster, but I'm not totally sure how. And so there's a lot of energy to talk to companies and things like that. But I always tell people that strategy is insight and action, right? You might have that insight, I want to do this, I want to do that, but how do you actually put it into practice? So one of the things that as Jeff mentioned, we've really tried to accelerate is give a customer the comfort of our scale and knowing that you're going to have the whole CCC team behind the solution, but also the ability to move with speed, right? That could be a technical point around the platform, but it's also, as Jeff said, we already have those interfaces. We have some of the data elements that carriers might otherwise have to figure out, well, how am I going to extract this and get it over? We can put those things into production very, very quickly based entirely on what that carrier wants to do. So very configurable, lots of flexibility, but ultimately we don't want carriers to have to worry about how do I make something happen as much as, hey, I see this as an opportunity and I want to get on with it.
Yeah, cool. And Jeff, you talked about one of the kind of the tenets of CCC being the right sort of partner, acquisitor for you guys. There and Marc's kind of words around enabling or realizing your vision quicker as an accelerant, but also stepping it up a gear maybe. Can you share where you're at right now in terms of what is achievable for you within the business? Where are you going to be able to take things, and what does that look like to your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the right way to answer that question is to think about, broadly speaking, what does that claim journey look like, right? And then how the partnership could strengthen each step in that journey. Broadly speaking, I think of it in terms of intake in the ingestion of data, routing and triage, so get it to the right person at the right time. The third piece is taking action, right? So enabling that decision maker or that user to do their jobs better. And then finally, number 4, continuous improvement, right? Now, if we think about the first step, which is intake and ingestion, as Marc mentioned, because of their existing relationships with customers, it really helps us to kind of sidestep a key problem in the industry generally, which is if you want to work with an insurtech innovator, how do you get data over to them, right, in a secure fashion? There's trust that's involved as well. CCC is a trusted partner already with a good number of these carriers, and so being part of that platform and with the permissioned use of that data by our joint customers, right, we're already kind of ahead of the game, right? Because the data now is in a safe place already. Why not extend the use of that now that Safekeep is part of that product portfolio? The second piece around triage and routing, getting to the right person at the right time, involves really separating flow. So what can be completely automated versus what requires actual human touch, and that piece has to be enriched with data. You can't automate that without having good data. And if you think about fundamentally what CCC does is they have that insurance economy and also just a tremendous amount of really useful data for the subrogation process. And so, what we're also seeing though is that a lot of avenues open up beyond subrogation, right? That could also employ the very same data, the same data structures to feed those other use cases. The third piece is around action. And this is where you start to really kind of open the aperture. As I'd mentioned, there's subro, but there's also the potential to look at total loss and salvage. There's the potential to look at some SIU use cases, in particular with our ecosystem partners, right? And so there are a good number of additional value-adding use cases that we could explore to reduce leakage and increase recoveries, right? And then finally, the fourth piece is continuous improvement. How do you take the data enrichment, the data ingestion, the action, and then to forecast like what could we see, what is the impact on the business, but more importantly, as we learn and we improve our processes, right, are we going to see a corresponding uptick? Those are things that we're really interested in. I'm an old kind of Lean Six Sigma black belt, right? And we're constantly thinking about quantifying and constantly improving processes. And so that piece is going to be critical. I think that it's just a great partnership between CCC and Safekeep, right, or the relationship there to build that out.
Yeah, great.
I was just going to build on something that Jeff said. One of the things that I think is interesting for people to know around some of the history of when, again, customers have asked us to look at Subro for many years, until AI really became predominant as a technology. That's really the big change. I think that's what you're seeing, like what Safekeep has done with Subro AI. We're seeing that across the board in a lot of different areas, right? I mean, you think about just the things that the team does around natural language processing and taking unstructured data. You couldn't do that with a basic rules engine, 10 years ago or something, if you're trying to automate subrogation claims. So that, I think, is also the big shift that's happening with insurance companies. We're seeing massive adoption of insurers around AI. And it's not just things that we're doing, it's obviously things across the industry. Mm-hmm. But we've seen enormous increases in not just the comfort, but the actual adoption of deep learning solutions, certainly in our business. And I think the things you're seeing with the Safekeep team around Subro, that's where Jeff was going. I think you're going to see that continue to go across every single area of the claims process, right? Whether it comes to coverage validation, things around liability, other things, Jeff was mentioning SIU, stuff like that. How do you really embed that AI into every step of this so that you could really, push things forward much faster than we would have, some years ago?
And so I was going to ask you a question around market trends going forward and your position within that. I'm not going to ask you that because you kind of just touched on that, but I think what's particularly interesting is the change that we've witnessed collectively over the last 10 years and what we envisage for the next 10. I think maybe even more interesting question is kind of CCC related. You referenced you've been around for a while and you've always been an innovative company. How are you going to remain at the forefront of that innovation? And you're right, it's not going to be all housed within your own business, right? There's going to be a bunch of new Safekeeps setting up, spinning up wonderful technologies, gaining traction all over the place. How for you are you going to ensure in your role as CSO over there that kind of innovation is continuing and that CCC will remain a leader in the field?
Yeah, I mean, so some of it does come down to just culture. The company is really built to focus on what's next. We've been at the forefront of really every major technology evolution in our industry for the past several decades. We actually first moved to the cloud in 2003. We had our first machine learning solution probably 10 years ago. So there's a DNA of our technology organization, our product organizations to always be thinking about what's next. I think for us as a company though, and again, I describe us as the SaaS platform, the cloud platform for the P&C insurance economy. That is a enormous space. Sure. You're talking about like a couple $1 trillion of insurance that is trying to figure out how do I go to the next age, the next evolution. And as much progress has been made, I'll give you an interesting stat. So every year in the United States, over 1 billion days elapse between auto claims being opened and auto claims being closed. So that just gives you a sense of, frankly, inefficiency that still exists in this industry. That is people waiting for their car to get repaired, people waiting to get their car replaced after a total loss, people waiting to get their injury bills paid. And so there's so many things that we could do to drive that forward. And that's not just for insurance companies, that's also the body shop customers that we have. To Jeff's point, we are essentially the shop operating system for 27,000 collision repairs. And a lot of what happens to drive that cycle time is parts ordering, right? So we have digital parts ordering solutions. So we're trying to be, payments, waiting for checks to clear, that kind of stuff. We want to move that to electronic. So we want to really just systematically go through all those different areas. And to your point, look, we're going to build some really great stuff. We spend over $100 million a year in R&D organically, but we are going to be an acquirer of really the best technology that's out there. And we're going to partner with a lot of companies. We've been a platform for many, many years. We got a lot of different companies on the platform. It's something we're going to be doing even more as we go forward. But I think we are at a point where the insurance industry is, first of all, I think people don't realize outside this industry how innovative insurance actually is. I think people probably think that, it's still the insurance that they remember from their parents or whatever. But I mean, when you think about the use of AI in our industry, it's just an example. or even just mobile claims. I mean, I don't think people realize that, 20, 30% of all auto claims are filed through your phone today.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of digital stuff that's going on, but certainly there's a lot more that we could do.
No, I think it's fascinating, and honestly, I'm excited to see where you guys together take the business as well. I think we've tracked and always loved Safekeep, so it's a pleasure, Jeff, to connect with you finally and actually hear a little bit more about your story, and Marc, to meet you for the first time as well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the growth over the next few years, and also looking forward to meeting up in person, because that's been a long time. So a few trips out to the States, I think, for me. But for today, thank you both very much for your time, and I wish you both the best of luck with the business.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Appreciate it.
All the best.